Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Goldman from the state of New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Mayorkas, thank you for being here once again to endure the completely uncalled for, unwarranted personal attacks from my Republican colleagues. I want to get into some of what they have been saying because it's truly shocking that we are where we are. On the one hand, my colleague from Florida says that all Democrats want to do is throw money at the problem. Mr. Pfluger just said this is a policy issue, it's not a money issue. Okay. Is the Senate bipartisan bill that you worked on, along with the second most conservative Republican senator in the Senate, an independent and a Democrat, that was endorsed by Senate Republican leadership, a policy bill or an appropriations bill?
It is both, Congressman, it is both an appropriation bill and an immigration reform bill, and fixing what everyone agrees is a broken system. It would provide us with new legal authorities that are much needed and would really advance the security of the border.
And one of those critical revisions is in the asylum process. I know this is not under your purview, but do you have any sense of how many asylum applicants ultimately are granted asylum in this country?
Congressman, it of course depends on the demographics, but as a general rule, I believe it is approximately 20-25% ultimately receive asylum, but I would want to verify that statistic, and I probably shouldn't share it given my uncertainty.
Understood, and there are different numbers, but it takes at least 5 years and perhaps as many as 10 years for a case to be completely adjudicated. Is that right?
It takes many years until a case is finally adjudicated.
So let's just say, hypothetically, that we had an asylum processing system that could process any applications within 90 days, 6 months. Am I correct that that means that 75 to 80% of the people who apply for asylum would not get asylum and would be returned to their own country?
That would enable us to remove people far more quickly. You are correct, and that would make a sea change of a difference in our ability to enforce the southern border of the United States.
And is it your view that if that were the case, that there would not be an incentive for anyone who knows that he or she may not qualify for asylum to come to this country knowing that that person would be able to make an application to get a work authorization and stay here for at least 5 years to work? Is that correct?
That is, Congressman.
And that, of course, creates a tremendous incentive for people to come across the border. The problem is not our credible fear standard. The problem is not the policy of asylum. The problem is that we don't have the resources to process asylum applications as expeditiously as is necessary. So no one over here is talking about throwing money at the problem. We're talking about solving the problem. And in the Senate, they tried to solve the problem. They tried not just with appropriations, but with a policy bill. Unfortunately, the Republicans have put politics over our border security. They want chaos in order to win an election rather than to solve the problems. You don't have to take my word for it. Let's quote Donald Trump, who said that he sabotaged the bipartisan deal to secure the border because, quote, it made it much better for the opposing side, unquote, and that he had stated that he, quote, killed, unquote, the deal. Senator Lankford himself said that a top Republican told me that if I try to move a bill that solves the border crisis during this election year, he will do whatever he can to destroy me. He said, I do not want you to solve this during the presidential election. There was a policy bill. There was a policy change that would have significantly addressed the problems at the border. And instead, You all on the other side of the aisle sabotaged it, where you baselessly impeached the secretary who's trying to solve our problems at the southern border because you want to win it. You want to win in November.
Gentleman's time has
You
expired.
don't want to solve the problem.
The
gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
The gentleman's correct. The Intelligence Committee does oppose this bill, this amendment, but we oppose this because there was a working group that was put together by the Speaker. It had 2 representatives of the Judiciary, 2 representatives of the Intelligence Committee, 2 representatives appointed by the leadership, and a chair, Mario Diaz-Balart. Every person in that working group opposed this amendment. Now, the underlying bill already includes a provision of a requirement that the FISA court now create transcripts, and that those transcripts be transmitted to the congressional committees of jurisdiction, which include Judiciary and Intelligence. We'll already know what's happening. The difference is whether or not you pull up a seat and you eat popcorn while you're watching the court. But I want to go back to the Biggs Amendment here for a second, because the Biggs Jayapal Amendment is really what's dominating this whole debate. And this amendment, if you just read the front page of it, clearly says that it is about the intelligence that's gathered from foreigners abroad. This is not about Americans' data. America's data are safe, constitutionally protected. They're inbox and outbox. No amendment on this floor can change the Constitution. No statute on this floor can change the Constitution. The statute that we're talking about is 702, which is spying on foreigners abroad. Now, everybody in this House is pissed at the FBI and is pissed about the abuses that have occurred. Punish the FBI. Pass this underlying bill. Do not pass the Biggs Amendment and cause us to go blind and make America less safe. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Pretty much the entirety of the debate that has been had down here has been focused on the warrant requirement, right? The reason that we've got this particular amendment here before us right now is simply to just be able to have more reporting and more understanding of what's happening in the FISC. But there is always constant resistance by the intelligence community to looking under the hood, because it is always the case that they want to use the fear. Perhaps it is a universal truth that the loss of liberty at home is to be charged against danger, real or pretended, from abroad. James Madison to Thomas Jefferson, May 13th, 1798. The fact is, the founders knew precisely what would occur. That the government, in the quest to have power in the name of stopping foreign adversaries, that in the name of fear, would use that power against our own citizens. That's what's occurring. That's what's happening. And we have before us real and obvious abuses, 278,000 of those abuses going after the American people. And our response is a bunch of technical stuff that chases the actual core problem. Our friends don't want to get into peeling back the hood of what's happening in the intel community, because our friends are the intel community. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
In conclusion, as we look at this debate and this bill, which is about spying on foreigners abroad, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Chinese Communist Party, giving them constitutional protections is unprecedented. There's no court that has ever done it. There's been no bill that has passed this House that gives constitutional protections to foreigners abroad. Americans' constitutional rights are preserved in the Constitution. This amendment undermines our security by giving Americans constitutional rights here in the United States to foreign adversaries. Vote no on the Biggs Amendment. Vote no on this amendment.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
To be clear, this amendment is about reporting requirements. But on the point of the warrant, after the rampant abuses by the federal government, it is clear that we should have a warrant requirement under 702 to protect Americans from the querying of incidental communication collected en masse under a broad grant of power to target foreign entities. That's the truth. This is the FBI that targeted Catholics, put pro-life progressive activists in jail, and targeted President Trump. The proponents give up the game, saying openly the need to target U.S. persons right here on the floor. The only thing that makes this warrantless collection of millions of Americans' international communications lawful, quote unquote, is the government's certification that it is targeting foreigners and only foreigners. If the government changes its mind and wants to go after an American, it should have to go back and get the warrant that it skipped on the front end. This is not that hard. By the way, the argument that we would need 2,000 judges to filter through warrant requirements begs the question, which is it? The proponents' own data indicate they will only get a hit for 1% to 2% via metadata. Some of those will have exceptions under our warrant amendment that we offer, so it would probably be less than 1%. So the 2,000 judges argument is just straight up false. It's just not that hard. If you want to go after an American, if you want to look at their information, get a warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to take a minute just to answer the question you keep asking, which is, what is the business of the Bidens? Not surprisingly, you consistently and continually refer to the Bidens, the Biden family, and you never refer to the individual names. So let me just help you out with telling you what the professions are of the Bidens. Hunter Biden was a corporate governance lawyer appointed by George Bush to the Amtrak board and then served on a number of corporate boards and investment firms. Jim Biden, you can put that down for a second. Jim Biden is a businessman. Joe Biden is the President of the United States and has been a public servant and elected official for the better part of 50 years. Now, Hunter Biden, you may want to discuss what his business was and whether he was equipped to be part of an investment firm to provide services based on his experience, but that has nothing to do with your jurisdiction or the impeachment investigation, because you cannot link any of his business dealings, A, to any foreign government, which he was never paid by, unlike Donald Trump's and Donald Trump's family, or B, to the President of the United States. And that's why your impeachment investigation is a spectacular failure. Now let's turn to the issue of this hearing. In the opening statement, the chairman chided Democrats for adding Russia to a hearing on political warfare. It's truly remarkable, given the following facts. First, we know that Russia used political warfare to interfere in the 2016 election on behalf of Donald Trump. We know that from the Mueller report, which my colleague from Texas just referenced. The Mueller report never, of course, said there was no collusion. It just stated that there was insufficient evidence to prove a criminal conspiracy. But there was plenty of evidence of collusion, including just a few, Donald Trump Jr. eagerly meeting with Russians to get, quote, dirt, unquote, on Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump asking Russia to hack into Hillary Clinton's emails, which they did, and Paul Manafort, the campaign chairman, giving internal polling data to a Russian spy. And in fact, Special Counsel Mueller stated that the Trump campaign knew about the Russian interference, welcomed it, and used it for their benefit. But importantly, Special Counsel Mueller also charged 24 Russians with interfering in the 2016 election through a hacking scheme and social media. Let's also point out that Chairman Comer and Chairman Jordan have both stated that the best evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors by President Biden was a thoroughly and repeatedly debunked theory of bribery that was planted in this committee by the Russian government through an FBI source. Third, Republican chairmen of our national security committees in the House have stated that Russian disinformation has infiltrated the Republican Party and is parroted on the House floor, as more than half the Republican Party has taken the side of Vladimir Putin against our Democratic ally in Ukraine. Now, Professor Snyder has done a masterful job explaining how the CCP's efforts to engage in political warfare is based on Russia's previous efforts to do so. And in fact, China's primary means of doing so is to amplify Russian disinformation and political warfare. And here we have two spies, one alleged Russian spy, one Chinese spy on the top, Gal Luft, and one alleged Russian spy on the bottom, Alexander Smirnov. Alexander Smirnov is the one who planted the false information about the bribery that the chairman and both chairmen have said is the best evidence of wrongdoing by Joe Biden. Gal Luft is the Chinese spy who the chairman has said was a very credible witness. So you cannot discuss the CCP efforts to engage in political warfare without discussing Russia's. But not surprisingly, the party of Putin in the majority wants to do just that. Let's just make one reference to the Chinese spy.
Mr. Chairman.
We're supposed to talk about...
Mr. Chairman.
Please stop my time.
Stop the clock. Chair recognizes Mr. Sessions.
Mr. Chairman, I think that was a personal remark at me and my party. I think it's inappropriate, and I would ask that the gentleman's words be taken down.
I don't think the gentleman mentioned your name, did he?
He said the party of, he referred to my party as the party of Putin, and that is a personal slanderous statement.
No, it's not.
A statement about a party by
I would ask
definition
that
is
his
not about a
words be
person.
taken down.
A statement about a party is by definition not a party about a statement
The
about a
committee
person.
will suspend.
I do get to defend myself, Mr. Chairman, and what I would say is that
We've suspended. Do you wish to take down what you said?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, we suspend.
And I don't because it's not reference any
Well, it-
individual member of Congress, which is the only reason why words are taken down.
The chair has ruled that, unfortunately, since his remarks weren't directed towards a person but rather a party, then they cannot be taken down. But I will remind everyone about the decorum that we have all agreed to abide by, as well as the purpose of this hearing. It's about the Chinese Communist Party's influence in America. And I think,
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Goldman,
have my
you have
time
14
restored.
seconds.
No,
left.
I'd like my time restored to 20
Oh, you have-
seconds
you have
because I would
20
like to
seconds
talk
then.
about
All right.
what you just said is this hearing, the point of this hearing, which is the CCP. So if I could get my time back to 20 seconds, I just have one more point to make on that.
20 seconds.
Thank you.
19.
So let's talk about the CCP's infiltration. After Gal Luft was arrested, and a simple internet search would show that he was arrested, the chairman said that he was a very credible witness on the Biden family corruption. Do you know what else he was charged for? He was charged for making false statements to law enforcement about the very information that the chairman claimed to be credible.
Time's expired.
Just like
Chair now
Alexander
recognizes Mr.
Smirnov,
Burchett from
the
Tennessee.
Russian agent was
Chair
charged with
recognizes
false
Mr.
statements.
Burchett.
Narasta, prior to September 11th, 2001, how many individuals had flown airplanes into the World Trade Center and killed 3,000 people?
0.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, how many gotaways have there been?
1.7 million known. That means there's evidence, video, whatever, but I can't give you an estimate on how many we don't know in the hundreds of miles of border that are not being patrolled.
Mr. Narasta, where are those 1.6 million gotaways?
They are most likely at different places in the United States.
Who are they?
Working and living.
Who are they?
Well, they're probably people from different countries around the world, sir.
Probably. People from all around
They
the
are
world.
from different countries around the world, yes, sir.
Yeah. How many different countries?
Well, if the data that we have about those who are apprehended is any indication, a large number of countries, probably about
162 of them from all over the world?
Probably, yes, sir.
Right. You willing to bet your family's life, my family's life, on the safety of in our country, irrespective of who these individuals are when you don't even know who they are?
Yes, sir. The chance of dying from a foreign-born terrorist attack since 1975
I'm
is
sure
1 in
that's, I'm sure, Mr.
4.4 million
Narasta,
per
Mr.
year.
Narasta, I'm sure that is great comfort to the families of the people from 9/11. Because when you sit here and testify that 0 people have committed a terrorist attack from crossing our border, I'm sure that is comfort to the people who had terrorist attacks committed by people who came here and overstayed their visas.
It is
The fact
no
of the matter
comfort
is, the fact of the matter
victim.
is, when you talk about having an open border, and you minimize the open border by saying that people have to pay $5,000 to come here in that open border, You're ignoring the fact of what that does to human beings when it is in fact so open that that's exactly what's happening. I'm sure that your position is great comfort to the man in Baltimore who was being held up for ransom for $23,000 so that his little girl wouldn't get raped in a stash house in Fort Worth. Have you talked to that little girl or to that father?
Was he a terrorism suspect?
Have you talked to that father, Mr. Narasta?
No, I'm not aware of that terrorism case. What was his name?
Have you talked to that father whose little girl was being raped in a stash house?
No, I haven't. Is this a terrorism-related issue?
I'm answering the questions, and this is the subject matter I want to talk about in this hearing, Mr. Narasta, because you're the one sitting here trying to tell the American people that our border is perfectly fine, that it is perfectly okay, that it is, not open because people are paying $5,000 or $10,000 to get here. So it is very much relevant that a little girl's getting raped in a stash house because of the policies of you and radical leftists who don't give a damn about it, because it is more politically expedient for you to saddle up to the Libertarian Cato Institute or a bunch of radical leftists and talk about, how important it is for people to free flow across borders.
I have talked about the chaos repeatedly, sir. The way to reduce the chaos is through legalization and liberalization, not cracking down more. If you cared about the border chaos, that is the way to do it.
Which will perpetuate the lawlessness, and you know it. Mr. Bensman.
Exact opposite.
Please, Mr. Bensman, can you please expand on your testimony about dozens of terror watch list foreign nationals apprehended at the southern border being members of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, and how dangerous that is to this country?
Right. One of the most disturbing aspects of the border crisis has been the recent development of FARC-related terror watch-listed suspects crossing that border. Those are people who have spent years and years involved in murder, kidnapping, drug trafficking, extortion, bombings. They are experts in weaponry. These are people who the United States absolutely would never countenance coming across the border and never provide a visa for, certainly. The fact that FARC members, former of the delisted faction, but also there are two FARC factions that are still listed, that those people would cross our border and come into this United States is anathema to all of our homeland security values, a terrible development that we should pay a lot of attention to, because a lot of Colombians are coming across. It is true that so far we haven't seen an attack. This is a relatively new thing for FARC, but one thing that we have to worry about is that when FARC members cross into the United States successfully, they will embed themselves in Colombian immigrant communities and very probably begin intimidation tactics, vigilante justice. This is a terrible thing for Colombian communities inside the United States in general. Plus, these people are professional drug traffickers their whole lives, so we're going to be hearing a lot about FARC people over the next decade. This is not.
Yield back. Thank
this
you,
is not a reason.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Bensman.
Next is Ms. Escobar.
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank Mr. Correa for yielding to me, switching with